We are just days away from the one-year anniversary of the Mother Emanuel massacre. All this week, we are devoting time remembering those who died. I traveled to Dallas, Texas to speak with Sharon Risher about her mother, Ethel Lance, and her crusade to make it more difficult for some people to get guns.
Mama opened the doors of that church and closed them at night. And everybody knew if something was going on, you had to talk to Miss Lance. But yet she loved to smile and dance. We would get together as a family and we'd put on music, and Mama put on that James Brown.
Those are the kinds of memories that help Reverend Sharon Risher deal with the murder of her mother, Ethel Lance. She has worked as a hospital chaplain here at historic Parkland Hospital, the same place where President John F. Kennedy died, for more than a decade. Her roots run deep in Charleston. Sundays were spent in the pews of Emanuel AME Church. Now her thoughts about Mother Emanuel are filled with heartache, images of her mother being killed during Bible study.
You know, I wouldn't think about it.
Recalling June 17, 2015 hurts.
I tried to put that out my mind.
Knowing that her mother spent her final minutes in a place she loved.
Because I just didn't want to go there.
With a man who was filled with hate.
I don't wish this on my worst enemy.
And committed to complete destruction.
Of course, the moment that resonated with a lot of people around the world is when your sister stood in bond court and said to the shooter, "I forgive you."
But I forgive you.
My first reaction was, how could she stand up there 48 hours later and said she forgive the man that killed our moms and our cousins and all those people in the church? How could she? But I think the city and everybody else latched on to that because it gave them a sense of hope. But to me, it was a false sense of hope because that's not really how everybody felt. Even to this day, the anger has subsided some, but I'm still angry.
Do you think you will ever live in Charleston again?
No, I probably will not ever live in Charleston again. The heaviness is like, my mom's is everywhere.
Sharon Risher has stepped away from her role as chaplain and onto the world stage.
I've had the opportunity to be a part of a rally on Capitol Hill when we tried to get people to understand that we're not trying to take anybody's Second Amendment away from them.
She is an unwitting member of a group who've lost loved ones to gun violence.
If you want a gun, to go through a background check.
Pushing for what she calls responsible gun ownership.
A bullet is a bullet, and it can't come out the gun unless the person has the gun. I want America to get a different idea about the relationship that they have with their guns.
She is still a minister, but her message is different. Her mission now to prevent other families from losing loved ones to gun violence.
I can't do no less than to speak up, to make her life meaningful, and to let other people know that through your faith, you could walk through anything.
Accused shooter Dylan Roof was able to buy a gun from a West Columbia store despite a pending drug charge against him. Because of breakdowns in checking his background, Roof was able to legally purchase that gun. Reverend Risher is pushing now to close that so-called Charleston loophole by requiring that gun buyers go through a complete background check with no time limit. On the evening of June 17, 2015, 12 people participated in Bible study at Emanuel AME Church. Minister Myra Thompson was leading this service. She'd prepared for weeks. Her daughter, Denise Quarles, told me that if her mother had to die, at least it was while she was doing God's work.
Did she love this place when she walked in?
Oh yeah, she yelled as soon as she walked in. She said, "Oh, it's beautiful."
as Denise Quarles showed me around her Atlanta apartment.
Laundry clothes in there this morning on the way out.
She explained that her mother, Myra Thompson, had been excited about cleaning, organizing, and decorating it.
And everything that you see in the apartment, it's because she put it there.
Every inch.
As I'm very independent, and I told her and my father I had movers and I didn't need them to come.
Of her home has her mother's touch.
She was adamant that she was going to be here.
As Denise pointed out in these pictures, Thompson always stuck close to her side. She was always a phone call away.
You said the week of the shooting was a very busy week for your mom. She was very excited about leading Bible study June 17th.
Before she went into the church, she took my phone call. She said, "Girl, why do you keep calling me?" And I said, "Mom, you know, I was just calling to check on you. I wanted to make sure you were okay." And she said, "Yes, I'm fine. I'm going to church."
A quick conversation, and then Denise said she fell asleep. She said that night her mother appeared to her in a dream.
I fell asleep on this sofa right where you're sitting.
It was around the same time her mother was actually leading the Bible study at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston.
My mom was swimming. Her hair was pulled back into a bun, and she never looked at me. I was swimming with her. She was a little bit ahead of me. I saw her head go up about 3 times, up and down in the water. I swam over to where she was. There was no struggling, no screaming or anything. I swam to where she was, and I did like that. And I didn't feel her body.
Denise said in the dream, when she called out for her mother, a voice said,
He said, "Denise, your mommy has died."
Denise said she woke up drenched and disturbed.
I'm young, so I grabbed my phone. I wanted to see what I missed on social media while I was sleeping. And when I clicked on Facebook, the first post said there was a shooting at Emmanuel AME Church.
Within a few minutes, her entire life changed.
I heard it directly from God. That was God who told me. And
There's no question in your mind.
no question in my mind.
Denise and the world learned the horror that would become the truth. Myra Thompson and 8 church members had been killed.
Unfortunately, she died in the church, but if she had to choose to die anywhere, I'm sure that's where she would have chosen, because she was doing God's work.
When Ethel Lance's daughter talked about forgiveness in bond court, how did you react to her telling Dylan Roof, "I forgive you"?
I had to forgive him for my own peace. My parents didn't teach me to hate anyone. So for him to go there and say that he wanted to start a race war, he can't start a race war as far as me trying to hate him or hate anyone else who might look like him.
Instead, Denise Quarles is moving forward. Her mother is no longer physically at her side, but she's guided by her mother's spirit.
Mom always told me to have my own relationship with him. Now I see why.
They grew up attending historic Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston. Their beloved church is also where their sister would die. North Carolina State Senator Malcolm Graham explained that his sister spent her life around words. She was a dedicated librarian and a lifelong learner who would want people to learn from this tragedy. She wasn't even supposed to be at Emmanuel that night.
No, she came to drop something off, and she dropped it off to the individual. Bible study was getting ready to start, and so she decided to stay.
North Carolina State Senator Malcolm Graham wanted to talk about his sister, a lifelong librarian in the Charleston County Public Library System, at the place where he and Cynthia Graham Hurd spent hours walking and talking, the banks of Brittle Bank Park.
You found out about the shooting that night because you were watching TV.
Yeah.
And what was your first reaction?
Call Cynthia. The busybody person would know what's going on down there, right? It's my home church in my hometown, And so obviously I was very concerned, and the person I called first was Cynthia, and obviously to no avail. You're never at the wrong place at the wrong time when you go to church, and so I will not say that. She was at the right place at the right time.
What would she say about this?
This wasn't really an attack on her. She would say this was an attack on a race of people, and that this was an attack on humanity.
Would she be angry?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. She would be very angry, and she would be amused by the response of forgiveness. She would have found that that was just too simplistic of a response. This really wasn't about gun violence. The gun was the tool that the perpetrator used to commit the crime. My mother sung in the choir. My sister and I sent out Easter speeches here.
While walking inside Mother Emanuel, Senator Graham painted a picture of his and Cynthia's life.
Both of my parents' homegoing service was held here, and they're in the church graveyard. So Emanuel is a place that I know very well. I consider it a second home.
He explained that he believed that the appropriate punishment for the man who murdered his sister and 8 people in the basement of his beloved church is death.
Do you agree with the death penalty being a consideration for penalty?
I think it's the only penalty that should be considered.
A lawmaker working through personal grief, healing while trying to make the world his sister loved better.
My goal every day I wake up is try to create a community that's better tomorrow than it is today.
Malcolm Graham talks about what his sister did to improve this community. She served on the Charleston Housing Authority's board since 1995, and the library where she served as manager has been renamed the Cynthia Hurd Regional Library. A scholarship has been named at the College of Charleston in her honor, and there is also a used children's book drive in Charleston and Charlotte, both organized to promote literacy in children.
I received a call around 9 o'clock from one of my pastors who indicated that there was a shooting near Mother Emanuel.
None of us who are here will ever be the same.
This is the way we love our neighbor. This is the way we redeem our human history. This is the way we honor the Emanuel 9.
1 year ago tonight, longtime Charleston Mayor Joe Riley was at his home reading a book when he got the call. And like everyone else we talked to who was close to this tragic event, Joe Riley says it's something that has changed his life forever.
It was the saddest night of my life, it turned out to be.
And it began with a call from Police Chief Greg Mullen.
And he said, Mayor Riley, we've had a shooting at Mother Emanuel. I said, in Mother Emanuel? And he said, yeah, and there will be some fatalities. He didn't know how many or what.
But soon he would know how many, and so would the nation. 9 people gunned down in cold blood. And one of the first things Riley thought about was how to dress.
I went to my small closet and said, you know, you need to put on a suit and tie.
Why did you think that?
Because it would be very important that everything that I did indicated respect.
Riley went to Mother Emanuel not knowing what he would find, but he was sure it wouldn't be Reverend Clemente Pinckney. He thought the senator and pastor of the church was in Columbia, but soon found out he was wrong.
And they said, Reverend Pinckney was in the church. I said, Reverend Pinckney was killed? And they said yes.
During a time of chaos and confusion, Riley spoke for the first time just after midnight. By then, the nation knew 9 were dead at the hands of a single gunman. He chose his words carefully.
This was thinking hard, and I wrote Unspeakable Act, which I thought was any other adjective might not as fully convey what had happened.
And it was up to Riley and Police Chief Greg Mullen to deliver the news to nearly 200 friends and family who had gathered together to finally hear the news they had to hear, even if they didn't want to.
As long as I live, I'll never forget that moment. Every possible oral way or physical way that a human can express utter despair of sadness was every sound of weeping and crying and wailing and moaning and sobbing, and it was heartbreaking.
But then something happened many didn't expect. No race war as the shooter wished, instead the exact opposite, because of what happened when Dylann Roof showed up on that TV screen in the courtroom.
Family members come at the bond hearing unscripted and say, "We forgive." And that caught everyone by surprise.
That made a big difference.
It made a big difference. It made a big difference. It was amazing.
I talked to Chief Mullen, I talked to Governor Nikki Haley, and they say this event changed them forever. It changed their lives. It changed their view, their way of thinking. How's it changed you?
Well, I have this, permanent, vivid memory of people subjected to this hateful, heartbreaking act respond with love. And that's what, I'll never forget that. And we, none of us who are here will ever be the same. But it was, in this most tragic moment in this community's history, violently tragic, the goodness of people made our worst hour, in many ways, our finest hour.
And Joe Riley said there are 2 ways for him that we triumphed over this tragedy. 1, it started the movement that eventually brought the Confederate flag off State House grounds. And 2, it renewed his efforts to build the African American Museum here in Charleston, 2 things he says he's very proud of.